The little girl sat alone on a park bench, her dark curls tangled, her green eyes fixed on something far away that no one else could see. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, dressed in expensive clothes, a tiny designer dress and patent leather shoes that probably cost more than my weekly salary, but none of that mattered because she was clearly lost, clearly scared, and clearly unable to ask for help. I'd noticed her 20 minutes ago, when I first sat down with my coffee taking my Saturday morning break from lesson planning. She'd been standing near the fountain, then looking around with increasing panic as crowds of people walked past without stopping. Now she'd retreated to the bench, drawing her knees up, making herself as small as possible, and I couldn't ignore her anymore. "Hey, sweetie," I approached slowly, keeping my body language open, non-threatening. "Are you lost?" She looked at me with those startling green eyes but didn't respond, didn't speak, didn't make a sound. "Are you okay? Can you tell me your name?" Nothing, just that distant stare, like she was somewhere else entirely, like she'd retreated so far inside herself that words couldn't reach her. I'd seen that look before. My little brother Marcus had worn it for 2 years after the accident that took his hearing. The world becomes too much, so you stop trying to engage with it. You go somewhere quiet inside your own head where nothing can hurt you. This girl wasn't deaf, I could tell by the way she tracked sounds, the slight turn of her head when a dog barked nearby, but she wasn't speaking either. I knelt beside the bench, keeping distance, giving her space. Then I did something instinctive, something that had become second nature after growing up with Marcus. I signed, "Hello, my name is Iris. What's your name?" Her eyes widened, the first real reaction I'd seen from her. She stared at my hands like they were magic, then slowly, hesitantly, she signed back. No sign language. I signed, excitement and relief flooding through me. She nodded, still not speaking, but her hands moved again. My mama taught me before. I felt the weight of that word before what I signed. "Are you lost? Where is your family?" She looked around the park, her small hands trembling. "Lost?" She signed, "Papa was here, then gone." I looked for him, got lost, scared. "It's okay," I signed, "I'll help you find your papa. Can you tell me what he looks like?" She thought for a moment, then signed, "Tall, dark hair, green eyes like mine." Scary to other people, not to me. Scary, that was an interesting word for a 6-year-old to use about her father, but I filed it away for later. Right now, finding him was the priority. "Do you know his phone number?" She shook her head, but then signed, "Men in black suits, they follow us everywhere." Men in black suits, that sounded like security, which meant her father was someone important, someone powerful, someone who probably had people searching for her right now. I pulled out my phone. "Should I call the police?" She shook her head vigorously, her eyes going wide with something that looked like fear. "No police, Papa says never police." Okay, no police," I signed, putting the phone away. "We'll find another way." I looked around the crowded park, searching for anyone who looked like they were searching for a lost child, and that's when I saw them, 3 large men in dark suits moving through the crowd with military precision, their eyes scanning every face, every child, every possible hiding spot. "Althea," I signed gently, "are those your papa's men?" She followed my gaze and nodded, but she didn't wave, didn't try to get their attention. Instead, she pressed closer to me, her small hand finding mine and gripping tight, like she was afraid they would take her away from the first person who'd actually communicated with her. "It's okay," I signed, one-handed, "I won't leave you until you're safe with your papa." The men spotted us, one of them speaking rapidly into an earpiece, and suddenly they were converging on our position, surrounding us within seconds. Althea pressed against my side, and I instinctively put my arm around her, protective in a way that probably looked presumptuous to these intimidating strangers. "You found her?" The first man said, his accent Greek or maybe Mediterranean, relief washing over his hard features. "Mr. Kyriakis has been frantic. She was sitting alone." I said nobody was helping her. I knew sign language." She responded to that. The men exchanged glances, something passing between them that I couldn't interpret. "How did you know?" She signs, "Most people don't." It was a guess. She wasn't speaking, but she was clearly trying to communicate. I thought maybe before I could finish, a voice cut through the crowd. Althea's voice was deep, commanding, carrying an authority that made everyone within earshot instinctively step back, including me. The crowd parted, and the man who walked through was devastating in a way that transcended simple attractiveness. Tall, powerfully built, moving with the predatory grace of someone who'd never had to hurry for anything, because the world arranged itself around him. Dark hair swept back from a face of sharp angles and classical Greek features, olive skin, a jaw that could cut glass, and eyes the same striking green as the little girl pressed against my side, except where her eyes held distance and fear, his held something else entirely. Intensity, assessment, calculation. Wore a dark suit that probably cost more than my yearly salary, an expensive watch at his wrist, and an aura of danger that made every instinct I had pre-warning. This was not a man you crossed, not a man you forgot, not a man who let anyone close without reason. "Papa." Althea released my hand and ran to him, and I watched his entire demeanor transform. He dropped to his knees, gathering her into his arms, his face shifting from cold authority to desperate relief. He held her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered, murmuring something in Greek that I didn't understand but recognized as the universal language of a parent who'd been terrified of losing their child. Then his eyes found mine over Althea's dark curls, and the assessment returned the calculation, the weighing of threat versus opportunity. You found her. His voice was quieter now, controlled, but no less commanding. She was alone, no one was helping. I didn't think, I knelt beside her, and she signed to me, signed. His expression flickered, something passing through those green eyes that might have been surprise, might have been pain, might have been hope. She communicated. With you, she hasn't signed with anyone since. He stopped, swallowed, started again. Since her mother died. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing, just stood there feeling the weight of what had just happened. This little girl hadn't communicated with anyone in 3 years, and she just told me her name, her fear, her need for help, using a language her dead mother had taught her. Althea pulled back from her father's embrace and signed something to him, too fast for me to catch. She responded out loud in English, "She wants to know your name." "Iris," I said, then signed it for Althea. "Iris, like the flower, exactly like the flower." She smiled, the first smile I'd seen from her, and signed, "Pretty name, like pretty flower." "Thank you," I signed back. "You have a pretty name too, Althea. It means healer in Greek," her father said, and I heard something raw in his voice, something that suggested he'd been waiting 3 years for her to heal, for anything to reach her in the silence she'd built around herself. "You speak sign language?" he asked, though it was less a question and more a demand for information. "Me brother is deaf. I grew up signing. It's my first language, really. I work as a special education teacher now. I specialize in non-verbal communication." Something shifted in his expression, that calculation again, but different this time, less suspicious, more considering. "I'm Damien Kyriakis," he said, and the name hit me like cold water. Everyone in New York knew that name, Kyriakis shipping, Kyriakis imports. Kyriakis. Everything. The family had been in the papers for generations. Old money, Greek money, the kind of money that came with power, and the kind of power that came with rumors about connections to things that never made the official business pages. "I should go," I said, suddenly very aware of who I was talking to, my heart racing for reasons that went beyond finding a lost child. "I'm glad Althea is safe. It was nice to meet you both. Stay." The word topped me mid-turn, not a request, a command wrapped in a single syllable. "Excuse me." He stood, Althea's hand in his, and took a step toward me. "My daughter hasn't communicated with anyone in 3 years, not her grandmother, not her therapist, not me. She met you for 20 minutes and she told you her name. I don't know what that means, but I know it means something, so I'm asking you, please stay." I looked at Althea, her green eyes watching me with something that looked like hope, like she'd finally found someone who could hear her in the silence, and I knew I couldn't walk away no matter how many warning bells were ringing in my head. "Okay," I said, "I'll stay." "Good." He pulled out his phone, typed something, and handed it to one of his men. "Give her your contact information. You'll hear from us tomorrow." "Tomorrow seems fast. She needs help. I can provide help, but there are processes, protocols. I work for the public school system. I can't just what, take a private client, help a child who hasn't spoken in 3 years because her father is someone you've read about in newspapers." He stepped closer, his voice dropping so only I could hear. "Me daughter is drowning, Miss Delgado. I've watched her retreat further and further into herself for 3 years. I've hired the best therapists, the best specialists, the best everything, and none of them could reach her. You reached her in 20 minutes with nothing but kindness and a language her mother taught her. So forgive me if I'm not interested in protocols. I'm interested in results, and if I say no, you won't." I looked at Althea, still watching us, still holding her father's hand, still wearing the first genuine expression I'd seen from her. "You're right. I won't, because she needs someone, and apparently that someone is me." He almost smiled. "Good. Nikos will drive you home tonight. You'll hear from us tomorrow." "And Miss Delgado, thank you." He turned, walking away with his daughter and his men, the crowd closing behind him like water around a ship, and I stood there in Central Park holding a business card with a phone number and the unsettling certainty that my life had just changed in ways I couldn't predict. Nikos drove me home in a black SUV that probably cost more than my apartment building. The ride was silent except for his occasional phone conversations in Greek. When we reached my building in Brooklyn, he handed me a card with a different number. "This is my direct line. If you need anything at all, call me." "Would I need anything?" "You're about to enter Mr. Kyriakis' world," he said simply. "That world comes with complications but also protections. You helped his daughter tonight. That means something to him, and when something means something to Damien Kyriakis, he protects it. I wasn't sure if that was reassuring or terrifying, probably both. I went inside, locked my door, and sat in my small apartment staring at the business cards in my hand. 2 cards, 2 phone numbers, 1 door to a world I knew nothing about. Me phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "She hasn't stopped signing about you since we got home." She asked if the flower lady would come back. I typed a response before I could overthink it. "Tell her the flower lady will definitely come back." The reply came immediately. "Good, see you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Address to follow. Don't be late, Mr. Kyriakis." I set down my phone and wondered what the hell I'd just agreed to, but when I closed my eyes, all I could see was Althea's face when she'd finally found someone who could understand her, and I knew whatever came next, I'd made the right choice. The address that arrived at 7 a.m. led me to Long Island, to a part of the island where the houses weren't houses, they were estates, compounds, small kingdoms hidden behind gates and walls. The GPS directed me through winding roads lined with trees, their leaves just starting to turn gold and red, until I reached a white gate flanked by security cameras and men in dark suits. I rolled down my window and one of the men approached. Name Iris Delgado. I'm expected Miss Delgado. Yes, you are. He checked something on a tablet, then nodded to his partner. The gate swung open. Follow the drive to the main house. Someone will meet you. The driveway curved through manicured gardens past a fountain that looked like it belonged in a museum, and finally revealed the house. Mediterranean-style white stucco with terracotta roof tiles, enormous windows overlooking what I could see was a spectacular view of the water. It was beautiful and intimidating and completely alien to everything I knew. I parked my 10-year-old Honda next to a row of vehicles that each cost more than I'd make in a decade and tried not to feel completely out of place. I was here for Althea, I reminded myself, not for the house, not for the money, not for the dangerous man who owned it all, just for a little girl who needed someone to hear her. The front door opened before I could knock, and an older woman appeared, silver hair pulled back and an elegant, not dark eyes that assessed me with the same intensity I'd seen in Damien's. She wore simple but expensive clothes and carried herself like a queen, which I suspected she essentially was. You are the teacher, the one who found Althea. Her accent was thicker than Damien's, more pronounced. Yes, ma'am, I'm Iris Delgado. You speak with your hands. She demonstrated a few signs, rough but recognizable. Help. Thank you, child. I learned, she said, because my granddaughter needed me to learn, but she doesn't respond to Memabe. She will now, I said gently. Sometimes it takes the right moment, the right person. We'll see. She stepped back, allowing me inside. I am Elena, Damien's mother. You may call me Yaya. Everyone does. Yaya, grandmother, I said, and she smiled, the first warm expression I'd seen her wear. You know Greek? No, but I know grandmothers. My abuela was the same. Insisted everyone call her that. She nodded. Some things are universal. Come. Althea has been waiting since dawn. She made her father promise you would come, and Damien Kyriakis does not break promises to his daughter. She led me through the house and I tried not to stare, but it was impossible. Marble floors, artwork that belonged in galleries, furniture that looked antique and priceless, every surface gleaming with the kind of wealth I'd only seen in magazines. But underneath the grandeur I noticed something else, photographs everywhere of a dark-haired woman with a warm smile holding a baby, Althea dancing with Damien at what looked like their wedding, laughing on a beach, her eyes full of life, the same eyes Althea had inherited along with her silence. That was Sophia, Elena said, following my gaze. My son's wife, Althea's mother. She died 3 years ago, car accident. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. I can see she was loved, very much loved. Yes, Elena's voice tightened, but love doesn't protect you from loss, it just makes the loss hurt more. Damien has never recovered. Althea has never spoken since, and this house, she gestured at the beautiful empty rooms, this house has been a tomb for 3 years. She stopped at a door covered in butterfly stickers, the only sign of childhood in this pristine mausoleum, and knocked twice before opening. Althea, we're here. The room was a child's room, but barely used. The toys were arranged perfectly. The bed was made without a wrinkle. The books on the shelves looked untouched. The only sign of real life was a small desk by the window covered in drawings, hundreds of drawings of butterflies, flowers, a dark-haired woman who must be Sophia, and now I noticed a new drawing on top, a stick figure with curly hair and the word Iris written in shaky letters. Althea sat at the desk wearing a yellow dress, her dark curls brushed and neat, but her eyes the same distant green I'd seen yesterday. They lit up when she saw me, and her hands immediately started moving. You came, you really came. I promised, didn't I? I signed back, moving into the room, kneeling to be at her level. I told you the flower lady would come back. She launched herself at me, wrapping her arms around my neck, hugging me with the desperate strength of a child who'd been alone too long. I held her gently, stroking her hair, feeling the tremor in her small body. She was so hungry for connection, so starved for someone who could understand her. I looked up and saw Damien standing in the doorway watching us, his expression unreadable, but his eyes, those green eyes that matched his daughter's, held something raw, something vulnerable, something that looked almost like hope. Miss Delgado, he said, his voice carefully controlled. Thank you for coming. Of course, I said, releasing Althea, but keeping one hand on her shoulder. I keep my promises too. Something flickered in his expression. Good. He gestured to the hallway. May I speak with you privately, Althea? A moment with your teacher, please. The grown-ups need to talk about boring things. Althea's face fell and she signed frantically. You'll come back, you won't leave. I signed, I promise. I'm just going to talk to your papa in the hallway. I'll be right outside that door. Okay. She nodded reluctantly and I followed Damien into the corridor. closed the door most of the way, leaving it cracked so we could see Althea still sitting at her desk watching us. Then he turned to face me, and I was struck again by the sheer presence of him, the way he seemed to fill the space around him with intensity and danger. Had her evaluated by every specialist money can buy, he said without preamble. Child psychologists, trauma therapists, speech pathologists, sign language tutors, she ignored them. All retreated further, watched them through glass like they weren't even there. What did you do differently? I don't know, I said honestly. I just saw a scared kid and I talked to her the only way I knew how. I didn't expect anything, didn't demand anything. I just offered. You offered? His eyes narrowed. Offered what connection? I said a bridge. I think when you're trapped in silence, sometimes you just need someone to meet you where you are, not try to drag you out but sit with you in the quiet until you're ready to move. She watched me sign and she recognized it. Because her mother taught her, it was something familiar, something safe, something that didn't demand she speak. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's not about fixing her, Mr. Kyriakis. It's about reaching her. There's a difference. His jaw tightened. Call me Damien. If you're going to be spending time with my daughter, we should be on a first-name basis. All right, Damien. I hesitated but pressed forward. I should tell you I'm not a licensed therapist. I'm a special education teacher. I work with kids who have different learning needs, but Althea's situation is complicated. Yes, he cut me off. I know. I've spoken with Dr. Okonkwo, her therapist. She's been trying to get Althea to communicate for 3 years with no success. She saw the video. What video? Pulled out his phone and showed me footage from what was clearly a security camera in the park. Me kneeling beside Althea, me signing to her, Althea signing back, her face lighting. For the first time in 3 years, Dr. Okonkwo wants to work with you, not replace you, augment you, use whatever connection you've established as a foundation for actual therapeutic work. I watched myself on the screen, watched Althea's transformation from frozen to animated, and understood why Damien had said stay, why Elena had looked at me with desperate hope, why this family had moved so fast to bring me here. I wasn't just a stranger who'd helped their daughter, I was a miracle, and they were holding on to me like a lifeline. What exactly are you proposing? I asked. Daily sessions to start. Damien said. You'll work with Althea here at the house. Dr. Okonkwo will consult remotely and visit weekly. You'll be compensated generously. I pulled up a number on his phone that made my eyes widen. That's more than my yearly salary. You'll be quitting your job at the school. He said this will require your full attention, full-time hours, complete immersion in Althea's world. You can't do that while teaching 30 other children. You're asking me to give up my career, my students, for a job that might not even work if Althea doesn't respond. I'm asking you to give a little girl her life back. He stepped closer, and I could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine, feel the heat radiating from his body. This isn't a job offer, Miss Delgado Iris. This is a father begging you to save his daughter. I have all the money in the world, and none of it has helped her. You helped her in 20 minutes with nothing but your hands and your heart. Please. The please broke something in me. Damien Kyriakis didn't seem like a man who said please often, who begged for anything, who admitted vulnerability, but here he was practically on his knees asking me to help his child. I thought about my students, the kids I'd spent 2 years getting to know, the routine I'd built, the safety of my ordinary life. Then I thought about Althea's face when she'd finally found someone who understood her, the desperate hope in her signing the way. She'd hugged me like I was the first person to touch her in years. Okay, I said, I'll do it. This entire body seemed to relax, tension draining from his shoulders, relief flooding his features. Thank you, you won't regret this. I might, but Althea won't, and that's what matters. When do I start? Now, if you're willing. He gestured toward the cracked door where Althea was still watching us. She's been waiting 3 years. She's waited long enough. The first session wasn't a session at all. It was just play. I sat on the floor of Althea's room and let her show me her drawings, explained each one in sign, told me about the butterflies. Mama loved butterflies, the flowers from the garden, the woman who appeared in almost every picture. Mama, she signed, and her small hands trembled. She's gone. I know, I signed back, and I'm so sorry. Do you want to tell me about her? She shook her head, then changed her mind and nodded. The contradiction of grief, the wanting to remember, and the fear that remembering would hurt too much. She was beautiful. Althea signed, and funny, she made Papa laugh. He doesn't laugh anymore. She taught me signs when I was a baby so we could talk before I learned words. Then she went away and the words went away too, and now the signs are all I have left. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I kept my face calm, kept my hands steady. She sounds wonderful, your mama. She was. Althea's eyes drifted to the window, to the garden below. Do you think she can see me? I don't know. I signed honestly, but I think if she can, she'd want you to be happy. She'd want you to laugh and play and talk to people who love you. Althea was quiet for a long moment, then signed something that broke my heart. What if I forget? How? What if the words are gone forever? They're not gone, I promise. They're just hiding. They'll come back when you're ready. There's no rush. We'll use signs. Until then, we'll find other ways to talk, and someday when the words feel safe again, they'll be there waiting. She looked at me with those green eyes so much like her father's and signed, you promise? I promise. She hugged Me again, and over her shoulder I saw Damien still standing in the doorway, still watching, his expression raw with emotion. He mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." I nodded, acknowledging him, and held his daughter tighter, knowing I just committed to something that would change all of our lives. I just didn't know yet how much the weeks that followed fell into a rhythm. Every morning I arrived at the Kiriakis' estate at 9 a.m., had breakfast with Althea and Elena, then spent the morning in structured activities designed by Dr. Okonkwo to encourage communication. We did art projects where Althea could express herself without words, played games that required signing, watched videos and ASL, read books about children who communicated differently. Afternoons were less structured, more organic. We explored the gardens, identifying plants and sign. Althea had an encyclopedic knowledge of flowers, her mother's influence. We visited the kitchen where the cook Maria taught us to make Greek pastries, and Althea learned food signs with enthusiastic accuracy. We sat by the water and watched boats, and I taught her the signs for everything we saw. She bloomed under the attention, unfurling like one of her beloved flowers. Each day she signed more, communicated more, complex thoughts showed more emotion. The distant look in her eyes appeared less and less frequently, replaced by engagement, curiosity, the natural inquisitiveness of a 6-year-old finally allowed to express self. Damien watched. I felt his presence constantly, even when I couldn't see him. He had cameras everywhere, security protocols that meant someone always knew where Althea and I were, but it was more than that. He appeared in doorways, stood at windows, observed from across rooms, always watching with that intense, unreadable expression. At first it unnerved me, the constant surveillance, the feeling of being studied, but gradually I understood he wasn't watching me, he was watching his daughter, watching her transformation, watching 3 years of frozen silence finally beginning to thaw, and he couldn't look away from the miracle. She asked about you today. I told him one evening 3 weeks into my employment he'd invited me to stay for dinner first, and we sat on the terrace while Althea played in the garden, supervised by one of the security team. Yes, she asked why I spent so much time with her. I told her because your papa asked me to help you and because I like spending time with you. What did she say? Smiled, and the expression transformed his face, made him look younger, softer, almost approachable. She said, "Good." Then she asked if you would stay forever. Forever is a long time, I said carefully. Yes, it is. He met my eyes, and something passed between us, something I wasn't ready to name but couldn't ignore. But sometimes forever is exactly what's needed. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I didn't. We sat in silence watching Althea chase butterflies in the fading light, and I pretended I couldn't feel the weight of his gaze on my face, the question he wasn't quite asking, the answer I wasn't quite ready to give. 1 month into my employment, I learned that Damien Kiriakis was not just wealthy, he was powerful in ways that went beyond bank accounts and real estate. I'd always known the rumors, the whispered suggestions that Kiriakis shipping was a front for something darker, but I dismissed them as gossip, the kind of stories people told about anyone with that much money. Then I walked into the wrong room at the wrong time. I was looking for Althea. We'd been playing hide and seek, her new favorite game, because it required no words, just giggles and searching and the joy of being found. I'd checked her usual hiding spots, the pantry behind the curtains and the library under her bed, and was making my way through the east wing when I heard voice, slow, serious, speaking in rapid Greek. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the tone. This was business, and not the kind that happened in boardrooms. I should have turned around, walked away, pretended I'd heard nothing. Instead, I froze in the doorway just long enough to see Damien stood at the head of a long table surrounded by men I didn't recognize, hard-faced men with scars and tattoos and eyes that had seen things I couldn't imagine. Maps were spread across the table along with photographs and what looked like building blueprints. Damien was giving orders, his voice cold and commanding, completely different from the man who read bedtime stories to his daughter. Then he saw meth room, went silent, every head turning to look at the woman who'd stumbled into their meeting. I saw hands move toward concealed weapons, saw the calculation in their eyes, the assessment of threat, and I understood with sudden clarity that I was in danger, real danger, the kind that didn't end with apologies and awkward explanations. Eris, Damien's voice cut through the tension. She's with me, she's Althea's teacher. The hands relaxed, the eyes softened slightly, but the message was clear. I'd seen something I shouldn't have, and there would be consequences. What kind remained to be seen. I found her, I said, my voice somehow steady. I found Althea. She's in the garden chasing butterflies. I just wanted to let you know. Thank you, Damien said, his expression unreadable. Nikos will escort you back. I'll join you shortly. Nikos appeared at my elbow, one of the security team I'd come to recognize, guiding me away from the room, away from the meeting, away from the reality of who Damien Kiriakis really was. We walked in silence through the long corridors until we reached the garden doors. Then Nikos spoke, his voice low. You didn't see anything, you didn't hear anything. You were looking for the child and you found her in the garden. That's all that happened. Understood? I nodded, not trusting my voice. He studied me for a moment, then something like approval crossed his face. Good, you're smart. Smart is good in this house. It keeps people. Olivia. He left me at the garden doors and I walked out into the sunshine where Althea was indeed chasing butterflies, her dark curls bouncing, her face lit with joy completely. Oblivious to the darkness that funded her beautiful life, I watched her play and wondered what the hell I'd gotten myself into. Damien found me that evening. I was in the library, one of my favorite rooms in the house. Walls of books, a fireplace that crackled with real flames, comfortable chairs that invited you to stay for hours. I'd been staring at the same page for 20 minutes, not reading, just thinking, when his voice came from the doorway. We should talk. I looked up. He stood in the entrance wearing casual clothes, for once dark jeans, a gray sweater that softened his usually sharp appearance, but nothing could soften those eyes, still assessing, still calculating, still trying to determine how much of a problem I was going to base. I said we should cross the room, pouring 2 glasses of something amber from a crystal decanter, and handed one to me before settling into the chair across from mine. The fire cast shadows across his face, highlighting the sharp angles, the aristocratic features, the danger that clung to him like cologne. You saw something today, he said, not a question I didn't answer, which was answer enough. What do you think you saw? I think I saw a business meeting. I don't know anything about business and business meetings. I took a sip of the drink, whiskey, expensive, smooth, not my usual, but I needed something to steady my nervous. That's a diplomatic answer. You're asking me to be diplomatic about whatever your business actually involves. Yes, he leaned forward and I was struck again by the intensity of him, the way he commanded attention without trying. Is that going to be a problem? I thought about it, really thought. For the first time since I'd walked through those garden doors, I'd known there was something dangerous about Damien Kyriakis. I'd known the rumors had substance. I'd chosen to ignore it because of Althea, because she needed me, because helping her felt more important than whatever her father did in boardrooms and back offices. But could I keep ignoring it? Could I stay in this house, take his money, love his daughter, while pretending not to know that his money came from somewhere dark? Does what you do, she started carefully. Does it hurt children? Oh, his answer was immediate, absolute. Never. My business is my business, but children are sacred. I would kill anyone who harmed a child, including and especially my own. Does it hurt innocent people? He was quiet for a long moment, then said, I try to ensure it doesn't, but I won't lie to you, Iris. My world is not clean. There are casualties, sometimes people who made choices that put them in harm's way, but I don't target innocents. I don't destroy lives for profit. I'm not that kind of man. What kind of man are you? The kind who protects what's his. He met my eyes and I felt the weight of his words, the layers of meaning beneath the simple statement. Family, legacy, power. I built an empire to keep the people I love safe. Sometimes that requires doing things that polite society would condemn. Like what? I asked, and he smiled, though there was no humor in it, like having meetings in rooms full of dangerous men, like making decisions that affect people I'll never meet, like carrying the weight of lives ended and lives saved, and never being sure I made the right choice. That kind of like in Sophia. I asked the question before I could stop myself. Did your world get her killed? His entire body went rigid, the air between us suddenly charged with something electric and dangerous. I waited for anger, for dismissal, for the cold shut-down I'd seen him use with others. Instead I got silence, a long, terrible silence that told me everything I needed to know. As he finally said, his voice rough, barely above a whisper, my world got my wife killed. A rival family sent a message. They failed to kill me, so they killed her instead. And Althea was in the car when it happened. She saw everything. She saw her mother die, and she hasn't spoken since, because the last thing she heard was her mother screaming. I felt tears slide down my cheeks, not for me, for him. For Althea, for Sophia, who'd been caught in crossfire. She'd never asked for. I set down my glass and did something insane, something that could have gotten me killed in a different context. I crossed the space between us, knelt beside his chair, and took his hand. I'm sorry, I said. I'm so sorry that happened to your family. The tears in his eyes surprised me more than anything else. Had this man who commanded armies, who ran an empire, who made grown men fear him, crying in the firelight over a wife 3 years dead, over a daughter trapped in silence, over a guilt he would never escape. She was everything, he whispered, the best part of me, the only soft thing in my entire life, and I couldn't protect her. I built walls and hired guards and accumulated power, and none of it mattered because they found her anyway. They found her and they took her, and they left me with a daughter who can't speak and a heart that doesn't work anymore. Your heart works, I said, squeezing his hand. I see it every day, the way you look at Althea, the way you watch her heal, the way you lit up when she hugged me that first day. Your heart works, Damien. It's just broken, and broken things can be fixed. Said, looked at me, then really looked, and I saw the man beneath the power, the father beneath the crime boss, the husband who still mourned his wife, the human being who'd been carrying an impossible weight alone for 3 years. I'd come here to help his daughter. I hadn't expected to want to help him too. Should run, he said, his voice Lo, you should take your generous salary and your good intentions and get as far from this family as possible. You should find a nice normal man with a nice normal job and forget you ever met us. Why? Because I'm starting to feel things I shouldn't feel. He reached up and touched my face, his fingers gentle against my cheek. Because every day you're in this house I want you more, and wanting you puts you in danger. Wanting me, he clarified, and I realized with sudden clarity that this wasn't just me, that the tension I'd felt, the glances I'd caught, the electricity in every accidental touch, it hadn't been one-sided. I should go, I said, but I didn't move. I should walk out of this room and never come back. You should, he agreed, but his hand was still on my face, his eyes still holding mine. So tell me to stop. Tell me you don't feel this too, and I'll never mention it again. I'll keep my distance. I'll be nothing but your employer, and you'll be nothing but my daughter's teacher. Tell me. Couldn't tell him, because it would have been a lie. I'd felt it from the first moment in the park when he'd looked at me like I was something miraculous. I'd felt it grow every day since watching him with Althea, seeing the tenderness beneath the danger, falling for him despite knowing better. I can't tell you that I admitted, and it was like releasing a breath I'd been holding for weeks, because it would be a lie, and you asked me never to lie to you. Good, he said, and kissed. Meth. Kiss was everything I'd imagined, and nothing I'd prepared for. Soft at first, tentative, like he was giving me every chance to pull away, then deeper when I didn't. Hungrier, his hands tangling in my hair, his body pressing against mine, the taste of whiskey and desire and 3 years of loneliness finally ending. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. This is dangerous, he murmured. Everything about this is dangerous. I know, I said, but I'm not running. Good, he kissed me again, softer this time. 'Cause I don't think I could let you go now, even if you wanted to. Leave you stayed like that in the firelight, two broken people finding something unexpected in each other, and I knew my life had just gotten infinitely more complicated. But looking at him, feeling his arms around me, hearing his heart beat against mine, I couldn't bring myself to care. The next morning Althea noticed we were having breakfast in the sunny kitchen when she signed. Papa looks different today, happy. Damien choked on his coffee. Elena raised an eyebrow, and I felt my face flush crimson. I had good news about work, I signed back quickly. Boring adult stuff, nothing interesting. Althea studied us both with those two perceptive green eyes, then signed. You're lying, I can tell when people lie. I looked at Damien helplessly. He cleared his throat and signed with careful deliberation. Iris and I have become friends, good friends, and that makes me happy. Is that okay with you? Althea considered this, then broke into a smile that lit up the entire room. Yes, she signed emphatically. I like Iris. I want her to stay forever. I told you forever, she added, looking at me. I said you should stay forever, and now you will. Out of the mouths of babes, Elena murmured, but she was smiling too, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her since we'd met. About time, she said, switching to signs so Althea could follow. My son has been alone too long. I was starting to think he'd turn to stone. Mama, Elena, Damien protested, but his hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently, and I squeezed back. Two people keeping a secret that wasn't really a secret. After Allie want to show Iris the butterfly garden today. Althea signed excitedly. Can we? Can I? Signed, and when she clapped her hands in delight, I felt something settle in my chest, something that felt like belonging, like home, like the beginning of a family I'd never expected to find. Damien caught my eye across the table and mouthed two words, thank you. I mouthed back two different words, worth it. This smile told me he understood. 3 months changed everything. Althea transformed before my eyes. The silent, withdrawn child I'd found in Central Park became animated, expressive, full of questions and observations, and the endless curiosity of a 6-year-old finally allowed to engage with the world. She still didn't speak, not with her voice, but her hands never stopped moving, signing about everything she saw, felt, wondered. She asked about my family, and I told her about Marcus, my deaf brother, about my parents who'd learned ASL when he was born, about growing up bilingual in sound and silent. She asked about my favorite things, and I shared my love of gardening, of baking, of old movies she'd never seen. She asked about everything, and I answered everything, because every question was a door opening, a wall coming down, a child returning to life. And Damien watched his daughter bloom, and something in him bloomed too. The cold, distant man I'd first met softened day by day. The smiles came easier, the laughter returned. He joined us for meals, for garden walks, for movie nights, where Althea sat between us, demanding we sign every joke, every plot point, every moment she might miss. We became a family, not officially, not in any way that would make sense on paper, but in all the ways that mattered. Breakfast together, every morning, dinner, every night, bedtime stories that Damien read while I signed so Althea could follow along, the three of us tangled up in a life I'd never expected to find. And at night, after Althea was asleep, Damien and I found each other, was gentle in ways I hadn't expected from a man of his reputation, tender in ways that made my heart ache. He held me like I was precious, whispered things in Greek that he later translated, declarations of devotion that made me blush, made me believe that this impossible thing we'd built might actually last. I love you, he said one night, 3 months in his body wrapped around mine in the darkness of his bedroom. I didn't expect to love anyone again after Sophia. I thought that part of me died with her, but then you knelt beside my daughter in a park and spoke her language, and I felt something I thought I'd lost forever. What did you feel? I asked, tracing patterns on his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady beneath my palm. Hope, he said, simple and devastating hope. I love you too, I admitted, and it was true. I'd fallen for him somewhere between the first stay and the 100th smile, between watching him with Althea and learning the man beneath the monster, between accepting his world and choosing to stay in it anyway. I love both of you, both of us. He smiled in the darkness. Althea will be pleased. She's been asking when you're going to be her new mama. I went, still? What? She asks about you constantly. He continued, unaware of my sudden tension. She wants to know if you'll stay forever, wants to know why you don't live here all the time, wants to know when Papa is going to marry you. She said that she asked about marriage. I told her it was complicated. He propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at me, his face serious but soft. Is it complicated to you? I don't know, I said honestly. I love you, I love Althea, I love this life we're building, but marriage, that's permanent, that's committing to everything, your world, your danger, your enemies forever. Is that what you want? He asked. Forever with you. So I thought about my small apartment in Brooklyn that I hadn't slept in for weeks, thought about my old life that felt like it belonged to someone else, thought about forever in this beautiful, dangerous world with this man and his daughteries. I said I want forever. Good. He kissed me deep and claiming, then rolled out of bed, crossing to his dresser. He returned with a small velvet box, and my heart stopped. I was going to wait, he said, to do this properly with romance and planning, and a ring you helped choose. But Althea's right, I'm tired of waiting. I've lost too much time already. Iris Delgado opened the box, revealing a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the moonlight. Will you marry me? Will you be Althea's mother? Will you stay with us forever? I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything except nod as tears streamed down my face. He slipped the ring onto my finger, and it fit perfectly because of course it did. Everything about us fit perfectly, even the parts that shouldn't. Can I tell Althea tomorrow? He asked, pulling me back into his arms. She's going to be unbearable. She's been practicing signing congratulations for weeks. How did she know? Children know everything. He laughed, and the sound was so full of joy that I started crying again. She's known since the butterfly garden. She told me you were going to be her mama, and I should hurry up before you changed your mind. I wasn't going to change my mind, I know, but she's very impatient. She gets that from May. Fell asleep in his arms, wearing his ring, dreaming of a future I'd never imagined, and for a few perfect hours everything was exactly right. The threat emerged the next morning. We were at breakfast, Althea practically vibrating with excitement as I showed her my ring, her hands moving so fast I could barely follow. You're staying forever? Really forever? You're going to be my mama? Really, really? Yes, really, I signed, laughing, but before I could say more Damien's phone rang. Answered, listened, and I watched his face transform from soft and happy to cold and deadly in seconds. He spoke rapid Greek, too fast for me to catch even the few words I'd learned, then hung up and looked at Nikos, who'd appeared in the doorway without me noticing. The Morettas, he said, and Nikos cursed, which told me everything I needed to know about how serious this was. They know about her? About who? I asked. But I already knew about me. They know about you. Damien's voice was carefully controlled, but I could see the fear beneath the fury. They know you're important to me. They know about Althea's progress. They know everything, how the security there are. Protocols. He stood pacing the kitchen. Elena appeared, taking Althea's hand, signing that they were going to pick flowers in the garden, distracting her from the tension filling the room. I'm working on finding the leak, but right now what matters is your safety. The Morettas, I said the name, tasting like poison on my tongue. They're the ones who killed Sophia, yes, and now they know I've let someone else get close, which makes you a target. Damien stopped in front of me, his hands finding my face. I won't let them touch you. I swear to you I will burn the entire world down before I let them hurt you. I believed him, and that was terrifying. The next few days were chaos. Security tripled, armed men appearing in every corner of the estate, cameras installed in new locations, protocols that meant I couldn't go anywhere without an escort. Althea noticed the changes, asked why there were so many people around, and I told her Papa is being extra careful because he loves us very much. It wasn't a lie exactly, but it wasn't the truth either. Damien barely slept, spending his nights in meetings and his days on the phone, his face getting harder, his eyes getting colder as he prepared for whatever was coming. I tried to reach him, tried to be the soft thing he'd called me, but he was retreating into the man he'd been before, the crime boss who couldn't afford weakness. Didn't shut me out. I begged one night, finding him in his study surrounded by maps and photographs that I didn't want to examine too closely. I'm in this now. I'm a part of this family. I need to know what's happening. What's happening is I'm protecting you. He didn't look up from the papers. I don't need you to protect me. I need you to talk to me, to tell me what we're facing so I can help. You can't help. He finally met my eyes and I saw the fear there, the desperate consuming fear of a man who'd already lost one woman he loved. I couldn't protect Sophia. I had all this power, all these resources, and I couldn't keep her safe. I won't fail again, I can't. I crossed the room, taking his face in my hands, forcing him to look at me. Sophia's death wasn't your fault, it was their fault. The people who planted the bomb, the people who chose violence, the Morettas, not you. I should have known, should have been more careful. Should have. He stopped, voice breaking. I should have died instead. It should have been me. No, I said firmly. No, you don't get to say that, because if you died in that bomb, Althea would have been alone in that car with her mother's body and no one to call for help. She survived because you survived, and she's healing because you found me, and this family, this beautiful impossible family we're building, exists because you're here. So no, you don't get to wish yourself dead. He stared at me, tears streaming down his face, and I realized he'd never let himself grieve, never processed the guilt, had just buried it under power and control and the desperate need to keep everyone safe. He'd been carrying this alone for 3 years and it was destroying him. I pulled him into my arms and let him cry, holding him through the sobs that shook his whole body, the grief that finally found its way out. I didn't say anything because there was nothing to say. I just held him and let him feel and promised myself that I would find a way to save this family, even if I had to fight the Morettas myself. The attack came a week later. I was in the garden with Althea, teaching her the signs for different flowers, when Nikos appeared at a run, his face pale, his usual calm completely shattered. We need to move now. He grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the house. Althea too. Come on, what's happening? I demanded, scooping up Althea, who clung to me, her eyes wide with fear. Breach in the south perimeter. They're coming. Who's coming? I asked, but I knew the answer. I'd known since Damien told me the Morettas had learned about me. We had seconds to get inside. We almost made it too. We're 10 feet from the house when the men appeared, 3 of them coming around the corner with guns drawn, their faces hard and focused. Nikos pushed me behind him, shouting something in Greek, but there were too many and they were too close. One of them grabbed my arm, yanking me away from Nikos, away from the house, away from safety. Althea screamed, not a word, just a sound, the first sound I'd heard from her in months of silence, and the man holding me laugh. The Kyriakis brat found her voice. He said, did you teach her, that flower lady, teach her to scream, teach her to beg? It won't help her, Papa, any more than it helped her Mama. I struggled against his grip, but he was too strong, too big, too professional. This wasn't a random attack. This was planned, executed, designed to hurt Damien in the worst possible way by taking the people he loved. Then I heard a crack of gunfire and the man holding me dropped, his grip loosening as he crumpled to the ground. Damien stood in the doorway, gun raised, face like carved ice. More shots, more falling bodies, until only one attacker remained, and that one found himself on his knees. Damien's gun pressed to his forehead. You come to my home. Damien's voice was barely human, all fury and darkness and the promise of pain. You threaten my family, you touch what's mine. Give me one reason not to end you right now. The man was shaking, crying, begging in Italian or maybe Greek. I couldn't tell, couldn't focus, couldn't do anything except hold Althea, who was sobbing against my chest, her small body trembling, her voice finally finding its way out. Mama, she wailed, and the word cut through everything, the violence, the chaos, the terror. Mama, Mama, Mama. Althea. I dropped to my knees, holding her, meeting her eyes. She called me Mama, not Sophia, not the mother she'd lost, but me, the word I'd waited months to hear spoken instead of signed, and it came out in fear and chaos in the worst possible moment. I'm here, I said, I'm here, I'm not leaving, I'm not going anywhere, I promise. She wrapped her arms around my neck and spoke again, her voice rusty from disuse but real, so real. I'm scared, Iris. I'm scared, I know, baby, I'm scared too, but Papa's here and Nikos is here and no one is going to hurt us, okay? We're safe, we're safe. Over her head I saw Damien watching us, his gun still pressed to the attacker's head, his face transformed by what he'd just heard, his daughter's voice speaking for the first time in 3 years, not just signing but speaking actual words. She talked, he breathed, she's talking. I heard her. I looked up at him and nodded through my tears. She called me Mama. Damien's face crumpled and for a moment I thought he might collapse. Then he straightened his jaw, setting his free hand, finding his phone. He made a call, speaking rapid Greek, and within minutes more men arrived, taking the surviving attacker away, cleaning up the bodies, doing whatever it was that men like this did after violence. Then Damien was there, kneeling beside us, pulling both of us into his arms, holding us like we were the only things in the world that mattered. You're safe, he kept saying, you're both safe, I've got you, I've got you. And despite everything, despite the blood on the ground and the fear still racing through my veins, I believed him. The days after the attack were quiet in a way that felt fragile, like the world was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Althea didn't stop talking. It came slowly, at first single words whispered rather than signed. Water, please, tired now, love you, Papa. But each word was a miracle, each sound a door opening that had been closed for 3 years. Dr. Okonkwo came every day now, monitoring her progress, marveling at the breakthrough that trauma had somehow unlocked. It's not uncommon, she Explained during one of our sessions, sometimes the brain protects itself through silence, and sometimes a shock, a moment of extreme emotion can break through that protection. She needed to speak, she needed to be heard, and in that moment her need was greater than her fear. She called me Mama, I said, still amazed by it, still crying every time I remembered she could have called for anyone, but she called for Mayo or her mama. Dr. Okonkwo said gently, not by biology but by choice, by love, by the months you've spent teaching her that communication is safe, that she can trust someone to hear her. She chose you, Iris, and that choice is just as real as any blood connection. I looked through the window to where Althea was playing in the garden, supervised by 3 armed guards, because that was our life now, her dark curls bouncing as she chased butterflies, her voice carrying on the wind as she narrated her adventures to herself. She was talking constantly now, making up for 3 years of silence sometimes. Mixing signs with words, using both languages interchangeably. Bilingual, I said, laughing through my tears. Sign and spoken, she goes back and forth like it's the most natural thing in the world. It is natural for her. Dr. Okonkwo smiled. You gave her the tools to communicate however she needed, and now she's using all of them. Damien dealt with the Morettis. I didn't ask for details, didn't want to know what dealing with meant in his world, but I saw the results, men coming and going at all hours, hushed conversations that stopped when I entered rooms, the cold satisfaction on Damien's face when he finally told me it's over, they won't threaten us again. What did you do? I asked, though part of me didn't want the answer. I made it clear that touching my family has consequences, he said, his voice flat, and final consequences they couldn't afford to repeat. Did you? He didn't let me finish the question. I did what was necessary. I protected what's mine. He pulled me close and I felt the tension in his body, the weight he carried. They killed Sophia, they almost killed you and Althea. I wasn't going to let them try again. I should have been horrified, should have questioned the morality of whatever he'd done. Instead I felt relief, felt safe, felt protected in a way I'd never experienced before. Maybe that made me complicit, maybe that made me just as morally compromised as he was. But looking at Althea through the window, hearing her laugh for the first time in years, I couldn't bring myself to care. Thank you, I said, and meant it. Thank you for keeping us safe. Always. He kissed my forehead. I will always keep you safe, both of you. Life slowly returned to normal, or whatever passed for normal, in the Kiriakis' household. Althea started school, a small private academy that Damien had thoroughly vetted with security protocols that would have impressed the Secret Service. She was nervous at first, clinging to my hand as we walked through the doors. But by the end of the first week she'd made friends, was chattering about her teacher, her classmates, the girl named Maya, who also knew some signs because her grandmother was deaf. Thriving, Elena said, watching Althea show off her new backpack covered in butterfly patches. I never thought I'd see her like this, happy, talking alive. You did this, Iris, we all did. I said, I just opened the door she chose to walk through. The old woman shook her head. No, don't diminish what you've done. My granddaughter was lost and you found her. My son was drowning and you saved him. This family was dying and you brought us back to life. She took my hands, her dark eyes fierce with emotion. You are a blessing, Iris Delgado, and I thank God every day that you walk through Central Park at exactly the right moment. I hugged her, this woman who had accepted me despite everything, who had watched her son fall in love again and supported it, who had helped raise Althea during the dark years and never given up hope. Thank you, Yaya, for welcoming me, for trusting me, for letting me be part of this family. You were always part of it, she said, pulling back to cup my face. You just didn't know it yet. The wedding happened in spring. We kept it small, just family and a few trusted friends gathered in the garden where Althea had chased butterflies, where I'd learned to love this dangerous, beautiful man, where our family had been built one small moment at a time. I wore white, simple and elegant, with flowers in my hair that Althea had helped choose. She served as my flower girl, scattering petals down the aisle and announcing loudly to everyone, Mama looks like a princess. She learned that from her fairy tale books, the ones we read together every night. Damien waited at the altar, and when I saw him I forgot how to breathe. He was devastating in his dark suit, his eyes bright with emotion, his whole body seeming to lean toward me like I was gravity, like I was the center of everything. You came, he said when I reached him. Of course I came, where else would I be? I don't know, he admitted. I kept thinking you'd realize what you were getting into and run. I knew what I was getting into from the moment you said stay. I took his hands and then I stayed. The ceremony was short but meaningful. We'd written our own vows because nothing traditional could capture what we'd been through, what we'd built, what we meant to each other. Iris, Damien began, his voice rough with emotion, when I lost Sophia, I thought I'd lost everything, the ability to love, the capacity for joy, the hope that my daughter would ever heal again. Then you appeared like a miracle in Central Park, speaking my daughter's language, reaching her when no one else could. You didn't just save Althea, you saved me. You reminded me that love was possible, that happiness existed, that I could be more than the darkness I'd built around myself. I promised to spend the rest of my life being worthy of you, to protect you, to cherish you, to love you with everything I am, even the parts I'm ashamed of. I was crying before he finished and had to take several breaths before I could speak my own vows. Damien, I came to this family to help a child. I didn't expect to find my home. I didn't expect to fall in love with a man who terrifies the rest of the world but looks at his daughter like she hung the moon. You gave me Althea, and she gave me purpose. You gave me a family, and they gave me belonging. You gave me your heart, and I promised to guard it, to heal it, to love it for the rest of my days. I'm not afraid of your darkness because I've seen your light, and the light is brighter than anything the shadows could ever touch. The officiant pronounced us married, and Damien kissed me while Althea cheered and Elena cried, and somewhere Sophia watched, I like to think, and smiled because her family was whole again. The reception was joyful, chaotic, filled with music and food and dancing. Althea insisted on a father-daughter dance, then a mother-daughter dance, then all three of us together spinning around the garden as the sun set and the fairy lights came on. She was inexhaustible, talking constantly, signing when the words came too slow, demanding everyone's attention with the confidence of a child who'd finally found her voice. I love you, Mama, she said as I carried her to bed that night, her eyes heavy with exhaustion but fighting sleep. I love you and Papa and Yaya and Nikos and Maria and everyone. I love you too, baby. I tucked her in, smoothing her dark curls so much like her father's, so much Morius. Mama Sophia happy, she asked, and my heart clenched. I think so, sweetheart. I think she's very happy that you're talking again, that Papa found someone to love, that we're all together. What makes you think about Mama Sophia? I dreamed about her. Althea's voice was soft, sleepy. She said she was glad you came. She said to tell Papa she loves him still, and she's not sad anymore. She's just grateful. I didn't know what to say, didn't know if this was a child's imagination or something more. Either way, it was beautiful. Either way, it mattered. I'll tell him, I promised. He'll be happy to hear that. She was asleep before I finished the sentence. I found Damien on the terrace staring at the stars, a glass of whiskey in his hand, looking more at peace than I'd ever seen him. She's asleep, I said, sliding into his arms. She told me something. What? He asked, pulling me close. Sophia came to her in a dream, told her she was glad I came, that she loves you still, that she's not sad anymore. Was quiet for a long moment, then said, I hope that's true. I hope wherever she is, she's at peace. And she knows I loved her and I love you, and both things can be true at the same time. They can. I agreed. They have to be. Hearts are bigger than we think. They can hold more love, more grief, more joy all at once. That's what makes us human. He kissed me soft and slow and full of promise. How did I get so lucky? You said stay. I reminded him. Everything else followed from there. Best decision I ever made. Second best. He corrected. The best was when she actually stayed. I laughed and he held me, and somewhere above us the stars watched over a family that had been broken and rebuilt, that had found each other against all odds, that had chosen love despite everything. And it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. 2 years later, the sound of children's laughter echoed through the Kyriakis estate, a sound that would have been unimaginable when I first walked through these doors. Althea, now 8 years old, raced across the garden with her best friend Maya, both of them signing and speaking simultaneously, switching between languages with the effortless fluency of children who'd grown up between two worlds. Watch this, Mama Althea called, demonstrating a cartwheel that ended in a tumble, and more laughter. Maya showed me. I signed back, beautiful, try again with your arms straighter. She did, immediately taking feedback with the same enthusiasm she brought to everything these days. My daughter, my daughter. I still marveled at the word, at the reality of it, had transformed from the silent, withdrawn child I'd found in Central Park into a vibrant, confident girl who talked so much. Damien joked we should have been more careful what we wished for, but he didn't mean it. I saw the tears in his eyes every time she called him Papa, heard the catch in his voice when she chattered about her day at school, felt his gratitude every night when we lay together listening to the sounds of our full house. Speaking of full, I placed a hand on my rounded belly where our second child kicked impatiently, demanding attention. Already 7 months along, and every day brought new wonder, new nervousness, new joy. Althea was beside herself with excitement, had been since we told her had already decided she was going to teach the baby sign language before it could walk. The baby needs to talk to everyone, she'd explained with 7-year-old logic. Signing is for everyone, not just deaf people. You taught me that, Mama. I had taught her that, and watching her carry that lesson forward, filling her world with communication and connection, was the greatest reward I could imagine. Damien appeared on the terrace watching us with that soft expression he saved for family moments. The crime boss, the man who terrified rivals and commanded empires, looked at his daughter and his pregnant wife like we were the only things that mattered. Dinner's ready, he called, and Althea immediately abandoned her cartwheels, racing toward him with Maya close behind. Race you, Papa, last one inside. Has to set the table. She blew past him, shrieking with laughter, and he didn't even try to catch up, just let her win, because he always let her win, because making her happy was more important than any competition. I made my way up the path slower now that the baby had shifted. My center of gravity, and Damien met me halfway, his hands finding my belly with the reverence he always showed. How are my two favorite people, he asked, pressing a kiss to my forehead. We're good. Hungry. The baby wants Maria's moussaka for the third time this week. This baby has excellent taste, clearly takes after. May laughed, pushing him toward the house. Clearly, dinner was chaos in the best way. Althea dominated the conversation, telling us about her cool project on butterflies, Maya adding details. Althea forgot, Elena correcting their Greek pronunciation, Maria bringing dish after dish from the kitchen, Damien pretending to be stern about vegetables while sneaking extra dessert onto Althea's plate. This was my life now, noise and love and family dinners that lasted for hours, so different from the quiet, lonely meals I'd eaten in my Brooklyn apartment before a little girl in Central Park changed everything. I have an announcement, I said during a lull in the conversation, waiting until I had everyone's tension. The board approved my proposal. The Kyriakis Foundation for Communication is officially launching next month. Althea cheered, even though she didn't fully understand what that meant. Damien squeezed my hand, pride evident in his expression. Elena raised her glass, and Maria clapped from the kitchen doorway. Tell us more, Damien prompted, though he already knew everything. Had been my partner in this from the beginning. The foundation will provide resources for children with communication differences. I explained, free sign language classes for families, speech therapy scholarships, assistive technology grants. We're starting with 3 partner schools in Brooklyn and expanding from there, including PS 118. Damien added, your old school, they're our first partner because of you. Elena set her voice thick, because you came back to that community with resources to help children like Althea find their voices. I nodded, remembering the meeting with my former principal, the tears when I'd explained what we wanted to do, the immediate yes that had followed. I'd left PS 118 to help one child, and now I'd returned to help hundreds, to create the kind of support system I'd wished existed when I was searching for ways to reach Althea. Sophia would be proud, Damien said quietly, and the table fell silent at the name. We didn't speak often, not because it hurt, but because it mattered. Sophia had planted the seed when she taught Althea sign language as a baby, never knowing that skill would eventually save her daughter's connection to the world. I looked at Althea, whose eyes had grown thoughtful at her mother's name. Mama Sophia started it. She said, I want the foundation to have her name too. Conway glanced at Damien, whose expression had crumpled with emotion. He nodded, unable to speak. The Sophia Kyriakis Foundation for Communication. Althea continued, warming to the idea, because she taught me first, and then Iris Mama taught me more, and now we can teach everyone out of the mouths of babes, Elena murmured, wiping her eyes from the mouths of incredible brave children who've been through more than anyone should have to face and come out shining. We changed the name that night. Me brother Marcus visited the following week. Had been wanting to meet my new family for months, but between his job as a software engineer in San Francisco and my complicated life, the timing had never worked out until now, until I was 7.5 months pregnant and desperate for my big brother's reassurance. Marcus, I ran to him as fast as my belly would allow, throwing my arms around him, feeling the familiar comfort of his embrace. You're here, you're actually here. You think I'd miss meeting my niece and the man who somehow convinced my little sister to marry into a crime family? He signed as he spoke, his voice carrying the slight difference of someone who'd learned to speak without hearing it. You look huge. Thanks, I signed back. You look old. Laughed, and I'd missed that sound, missed him, missed the easy communication we'd always shared. He was 4 years older, had been deaf since birth, had taught me sign language before I could walk, had shaped everything I'd become. Then Althea appeared. She'd been nervous about meeting him, had practiced her introduction for days, wanted everything to be perfect. She stood in the doorway, hands clasped in front of her, suddenly shy in a way she rarely was anymore. You must be Althea. Marcus signed, kneeling to her level. Your mom has told me so much about you. She says you're the best signer she's ever taught. Althea's eyes went wide. She signed back, I practice every day. I want to be as good as you. She's fluent, I said, proud beyond words. She learned from her birth mother, then from me. Now she's teaching her whole class. She did a presentation on ASL last month. Marcus studied Althea with the assessing gaze of someone who'd spent his whole life being underestimated by hearing people. Then he smiled. You know what he signed? The best signers aren't the ones with the fanciest vocabulary, they're the ones who never stop wanting to connect with people. I think you're going to be amazing. Althea beamed and signed something she'd learned just for this moment. My mom told me you're the reason she learned to sign, so really you're the reason she found me. And Papa, thank you for being deaf. Marcus burst out laughing and pulled her into a hug that she returned with enthusiasm. I'll take that as a compliment, kid, and you're welcome. Damien found me later on the terrace, watching Marcus and Althea in the garden. She was teaching him about butterflies, her great passion, and he was following along with the patient interest he showed everyone who wanted to communicate. Your brother is wonderful, Damien said, sliding his arms around me from behind, fitting his body against mine despite my awkward belly. He signs beautiful. I was my first language. I said everything I know started with him. I used to sign before I could speak, just like Althea, and look at Her now she found someone else who understands someone else, who speaks her language. She was so nervous to meet him, worried he wouldn't like her, wouldn't accept her, wouldn't think she was a real signer because she's hearing and he was born deaf. And now she's showing him butterfly species in ASL, and he's completely enchanted. Exactly, she leaned back against his chest, his warmth surrounding her. That's what communication is, that's what the foundation will do. Connect people who felt isolated, show them they're not alone, give them the tools to reach each other. You're going to change so many lives. He said, I'm proud of you, I'm just doing what you did for me. I turned in his arms, meeting his eyes. You took a chance on a stranger in the park because she could talk to your daughter. You funded her dreams because you believed in her power and money, sure, but also faith. You had faith in me when I was just a random woman who knew sign language. You were never random. He touched my face. You were exactly who we needed, exactly when we needed you. Fate, destiny, whatever you want to call it, but random never. I kissed him, soft and sweet, tasting the future we'd built together, then pulled back as the baby kicked hard enough for him to feel through my Bellasomion's jealous. He laughed, pressing his hand to the spot. Someone wants attention, well, she'll fit right in with her sister, I said, both demanding all the love we have, both getting every bit of it. Baby came 3 weeks later, girl, just as the ultrasound had predicted, 7 pounds 4 ounces with her father's dark hair and my eyes. According to Elena, who'd immediately claimed grandmotherly expertise, Althea had been the first to hold her after me, and Damien had signed, hello little sister, I'm going to teach you everything. We named her Elena Sophia after the two women who'd shaped our family, the grandmother who'd held everything together and the mother who'd started Althea's journey toward communication, toward me, toward this moment. Perfect, Damien said that first night watching Elena Sophia sleep in her bassinet, her tiny fists clenched, her face peaceful. We made something perfect, Iris, we made her together. She was a miracle, but we're miracles too. I reminded him everything about us is a miracle, you and me and Althea, and now her. We weren't supposed to happen, and we happened anyway. Pulled me close despite my exhaustion, despite the soreness and the sleeplessness and all the hard parts of new motherhood. I have a confession, he murmured against my hair. What, that day in the park when I said stay? I didn't mean it the way it came out. What do you mean? I meant it as a command and order. Stay because I need something from you, because you're useful, because my daughter responded to you. He was quiet for a moment, but somewhere between that moment and when you actually stayed, it became something else, a hope, a prayer, a desperate wish that you would choose us, not because I commanded it, but because you wanted. Toy did want. I want it every day. I choose this family every single morning when I wake up and every night when I fall asleep and every moment in between. That's what love is, isn't it? Choosing each other over and over again. As he kissed me, that's exactly what it is. So a year later I stood in the garden watching my daughters play. Althea 9, now tall and confident, chasing Elena Sophia, who just learned to walk, both of them shrieking with joy, both of them filling the air with the sounds of a family thriving. Marcus had moved to New York, taken a job that let him be close to us, had become Uncle Marcus to both girls and a regular presence at family dinners. Elena had declared him an honorary Kyriakis, which he'd accepted with mock solemnity and genuine pleasure. The Sophia Kyriakis Foundation had expanded to 12 schools, had helped over 500 children, had become exactly what I'd dreamed it could be. Next month we were opening a community center in Brooklyn with free ASL classes, family support groups and resources for anyone who needed help communicating. And Damien had stepped back from certain aspects of his business, had delegated the darker parts to people he trusted, had chosen to be present for his family in ways his previous life hadn't allowed. He wasn't a different man, but he was a more balanced one, a father first, a husband second, and whatever else came after. Happy, he asked, appearing beside me, sliding his arm around my waist, watching our daughters with the same wonder he'd shown every day since I'd first met him. Deliriously, what about you? Never been happier, he said, and I knew he meant it, knew it in the way he looked at me, the way he held me, the way he showed up every single day for every single moment. I spent 35 years thinking I knew what life was supposed to be: power, money, control, and then a woman in Central Park taught my daughter to say her name, and I learned that everything I thought I knew was wrong. What's life supposed to be then? I asked this. He gestured at the garden, at our daughters. Me, this is what life is supposed to be: love, family, connection, the things that matter when everything else falls away. You taught me that. I didn't teach you anything, I just stayed. Just staying is everything. He turned me to face him, his eyes bright with emotion. Staying when it would have been easier to leave, staying when my world was dangerous, staying when I pushed you away and pulled you close and made everything complicated. That's love, Iris, real love, the kind that doesn't give up. I'm not going anywhere, I promised. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Mama Althea called, running toward us with Elena Sophia toddling behind. We found a butterfly, a blue one like in Mama Sophia's garden. Come see, come see. We followed our daughters into the garden, toward the butterfly, toward the future, toward whatever came next, and I knew with absolute certainty that everything had led to this moment. A lost child in Central Park, a language spoken with handsome man who said stay, and a woman who did that was our story, that was our miracle, and it was only the beginning. Thank you so much for joining me for this story. If you enjoyed She Taught His Mute Daughter Sign Language, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more thrilling stories. Your comments mean the world to me. Let me know what you thought and what kind of stories you'd like to see